How's everybody doing out there? Y'all try it again. How y'all doing out there? Y'all know how we do. Well, Rev, my brother, my friend, it's good to see you. Those of you who don't know, Rev and I go way back.
Yes.
From, let's see, sit-ins on Connecticut Avenue. Remember that?
I do remember that.
I know you do.
I do.
Rev used to be a student body president at UDC.
Yes, indeed. Shout out Firebirds.
We used to get it on the basketball court.
Yeah, well.
Tell the truth. You know, and even when I worked on Capitol Hill, Rev was always a force. When I was working for John Conyers, you remember the sit-ins.
I got arrested in John Kyne's office. And that was my friend. I was like, man, my friend Calvin Conyers was like, I'm glad you're here, but I'm gonna arrest you today.
Exactly. What I've always appreciated about Rev is, you know, when we say don't talk about it, be about it.
Right.
And no matter what the situation was, standing up for justice and making sure that the most vulnerable, if they couldn't be in the room, that there was a voice there, and making sure also that doors were open and seats were pulled out to make sure that they could actually sit at the table. And that's what real activism is about. And I want to publicly say how much I appreciate you and being your friend and your brother. We've seen the highs, and the air is not as high, but we've always rode together. So I just want everybody to know how much I love you. So you're very deserving of this award, you know, from the DC Environmental Film Festival. What does it mean to you?
You know, it's a lot, because you know where I've been over the years. And so I have to first just give honor. This is Palm Sunday, so I have to give honor to my God, my Lord and Savior, for this guiding me and this getting me to this point. I want to just also give a shout out to my mom, Dr. Rev Yearwood. I want to give a shout out to my mentor, Dr. Dorothy Irene Height. I want to make sure and lift up someone who raised me, Dr. Beverly Wright. And I want to thank somebody before, obviously from Donald Smith, Imelda West, just so many more, obviously those who are not here, Cecil Mark Corbin. I can go down the list, this is so many. And then the entire Hip Hop Caucus team, the board who's here, Lita Rosario Richardson, Dr. Roger Mitchell, the managing director, who's actually the co-director. You got to make sure you get her name on the thing up there. Liz Halfstad, Brother T.C. Muhammad, who's not here. But just a long list in the whole team. But what this, and then obviously we see the other groups. So I'm also on the board of League of Conservation Voters. Shout out to them. I'm the chair of the board for Green 2.0. Obviously, I'm also on the board of Just Become Action Network, CCAN. So I helped found Third Act with my brother Bill McKibben. So it's a lot, right? It's a lot. You know what I'm saying? It's a good bit. But the most important part of this, Mustafa, as you know, is that the reason why I'm sitting here is because I still get nightmares. And I can't sleep. I mean, I sleep well, but I sleep with thoughts. And those thoughts for me are that the folks who died in Hurricane Katrina, and who, more importantly, the folks who died because the government that I pledged my life to, I was in the Air Force, but left behind Black, brown, and indigenous people. That there's people right now who are choking and dying in my home state, Louisiana, in Cancer Alley. So while this award, thank you, DC Environmental Film Festival, for this award. It means so much to me for so many things. It's a hard award to accept when it's based on the killing, particularly of Black and brown people. And so while the award is nice, I would gladly, honestly give it back to you if my people could have clean air and clean water.
And I know that comes from the heart. You know, James Baldwin once said that if I love you, I have to make you conscious of the things you don't see. For the folks who are in the audience who may not have been following your commitment in your career and your passion, can you talk a little bit about the early days when you first realized that fighting for environmental justice and climate justice was important? What was that moment or moments that got you there? Then I want you to also talk about the design and how the Hip Hop Caucus came together.
Yeah. So, as you heard the beautiful comments from the Black Oak Collective about this passion for particularly the next generation. My idea, first, of an environmental movement is a move, and this is not just my idea, but this is what I think wins. Let me be very clear. I think that the movement we have now is sufficient, but this movement will win. And so if we have a matriarchal, women of color, women, young people, queer-led movement, we will win on climate. So that's important because when the Hip Hop Caucus first got involved with the climate movement, we were outside. We were working on democracy. We had just got finished doing the issue. We did the Vote or Die and many other hip hop summits. The Hip Hop Caucus was created at the amazing, where I got my Master's of Divinity, Howard University. Hey, you know, I knew he was going to chime in right on the point. I got to get some for the Firebirds too. They didn't do that. Yeah, you know what I mean? But by Howard's side, the time they did right when they was waiting. They can now exhale now. They were waiting. They was waiting to get that out. I know Rev's gonna bring that up. We waiting. Okay, now we can actually enjoy what him and Mustafa gonna talk about. Actually, we got that part out of the way. So we 20 years ago in September 11th of 2004, we actually launched the Hip Hop Caucus. We were creating a number of things, but Hip Hop Caucus was created. I was a part of the foundation. I wasn't the founder, that's important. It was literally actually all those people who came to Howard at that time were part of the foundation of the Hip Hop Caucus. And so what happens there is that we had to go to Howard University during the Congressional Black Caucus because we actually want to have the first Hip Hop Caucus at the Congressional Black Caucus. But at that time, they didn't want to have anything called hip hop at the Congressional Black Caucus, and so there was no room in the inn, as they would say, and so we had to go down the street, down to Georgia Avenue, which was the best thing that could have happened to Hip Hop Caucus, because then we weren't connected and tied to being Democrat or Republican or independent. We immediately were like, we for the people, and so. And where the people go, we gonna go. And that was our first lesson because we were tied to a political party, which we're progressive for sure, 100% progressive. But if we're tied, then we have to then go that way. So from the very beginning, we weren't tied. And then that led into when Hurricane Katrina hits in August 29th, literally of 2005. And when that hits and we see people drowning and be left behind, stopped on bridges, you know, the whole 9 yards, we went and we were moving. Why this is important, because then Al Gore, who does an amazing film, does Inconvenient Truth. But what we realized that the Inconvenient Truth just wasn't the climate crisis, it was also white supremacy. And so we began to realize that even within this movement, the climate movement, is that, so I'll say it like this. It's been said that you can either be a part of the movement or you could be a space part of the movement. And there's a whole world in that space. And too many times Black, brown, indigenous, young people, queer people are in that space. They are a part of the movement. They're not a part of the movement. And so Hip Hop Caucus immediately began to think, well, no, we're going to use our culture. We're going to be able to make things happen and create change. And then just fast forward from there, we were able to then do many things, from economic justice. We just launched our Bank Black and Green. We did our vote campaign, which actually broke a world record, registering 32,000 people in one day. We were advocating now to stop Cop City in Atlanta, Georgia. We are advocating for issues around not just environmental justice and climate justice, but just many things in that regard. So Hip Hop Caucus has grown, but its theory of change, as you know, Mustafa, was based around narrative and storytelling. That was the key thing. I want to give a shout out to the team because they understood that either you tell your story or somebody else will. And so that was one of the key things there. And so we began to really work into production, really post the home album, which was called Heal Our Mother Earth. And then that was an album that was done with Neo and Common, Al Varner, Anthony Smith, many, many others, who actually I co-host at one time when we were doing the Cool Show. And then fast forward to where we are now, in which we have folks like Elijah who's in the room who helped us with the climate comedy special, H1's Heat Wave, up until right now, which is this amazing, I can't wait for you to see it, this amazing film that is co-directed by Liz Halfstead and Dream Hampton, which is, again, it is centered around women and a powerful voice. But what's really special about this is that also you're going to see Wanda Sykes and you're going to have all this. It's really, really funny. But what I love about it is that it's timely. It is talking about the issue that is important to the people. And I think that's what we have to go to in this movement, which is this. We have to be in a position where people understand the crisis that we're in. Not just telling them it's a crisis, not just saying that the sky is falling, because that, even saying that, comes from a position of privilege. If you can complain and still not be hurt, that is a position of privilege. When you can complain and you still feel the hurt and you can't have nobody listen to you, then you don't have privilege. Most people in this movement have privilege. And when you understand that you are right for complaining and right for, it's wonderful, you're standing up. But when you get to the point, like what Mia X says, and you'll see that you are drowning and you didn't even know the storm was coming. That's the moment. When you are Mama D in New Orleans and you are in a position where you can leave, but you don't leave because you understand the pain of Black people fighting forever, and because your neighborhood is mostly older Black people who sacrifice everything by sitting on the back of the bus and getting last hired and first fired, or being the ones who were scapegoated when any kind of resources were missing, you understand that when the waves come, you could have left. But when you see your neighbors floating down the street, 80-year-olds and 75-year-olds and 60-year-olds, people floating down Derjewan Street, and you need to catch them and then tie them to a tree, that is not privilege. that is a crime. As a crime that's being committed by people who know they are committing a crime. That's the difference. I was in Dubai, Mustafa. And in Dubai, I came across Darren Woods, who is the CEO of Exxon. Didn't really want to see Darren Woods. Was trying to get to the bathroom. And Darren Woods saw me and I saw him, and I was trying to get to the restroom, and I couldn't get there. And then Darren Woods stopped me. And I said, all right, I guess it's gonna go down right here. And then Darren Woods says to me, he says that I think you and Mike Bloomberg are wrong on petrochemicals. I was like, okay, it was really gonna go down right here. And I was like, well, Darren, I think you're wrong. On a lot of different reasons you're wrong. And then he said this to me. He said, we need to have this. There's nothing wrong with plastic. And then even further, I said, Darren, you know I'm from Louisiana. And you are literally killing my community. Your business plan means a death sentence for my people. And he was right in the eye, Mustafa. And he says, those health numbers you're talking about, Rev, you seem like a nice guy, but nobody is dying of cancer. So these folks not only are committing a crime, but they are okay with particularly Black people, brown people, handicapped, young, or old, dying in the richest country in the world. And I'm telling you, when you have something so evil as that, willing to make greed, listening to hip hop, hanging out at Mardi Gras, going to the Wizards or the Pelicans game, but okay with your mama dying.
Wow.
I didn't say this to him. I was almost felt like, well, I guess it's, if everything gonna be gaslit, I felt like that was it. But in my mind, I was thinking to him, myself, the fact that he don't have to see my people die. He don't have to cry at the funerals. He don't have to tell that little boy that his mama's gone because he had breast cancer. He don't have to feel that pain. All he got to do is talk to a few politicians, Democrat and Republican, and get them to be okay with his madness. And that's why Hip Hop Caucus and all of us need to be here. Because no matter what we call ourselves, if we allow for that madness to continue, then we are a part of the madness ourselves.
So Rev and I used to spend evenings just talking about all the various things that we needed to address and how often doors were closed and how we were going to get through those doors. And we're finally beginning to get to a moment now where we're beginning to unpack the systemic racism, right?
Yeah.
So there is an intertwine between systemic racism and environmental injustice.
That's right.
And there's an old quote that talks about a system cannot fail those it was never meant to protect.
That's right.
Let's unpack for folks. I wish we could turn the lights down like we were back in our old
In the
office.
little spot.
Right. Talk about the Hip Hop Caucus. Let me just share this as you prepared to take us through this.
Mhm.
In all the years that I've done this work, when I was at the EPA on Capitol Hill, it wasn't until I came to the Hip Hop Caucus, it was the first time that I could ever breathe. And I could breathe because I was surrounded by folks I didn't have to convince, I didn't have to educate, but we all were in it together. It didn't matter if we had $1 or we had $1 billion. We were going to keep trying, and we were going to keep uplifting our folks. And when I think about that quote, that talks about how systems were never created for our communities, I think about the value that the caucus brings in helping not only in storytelling, but helping people to understand how do we dismantle systems? How do we make systems work for the folks who are often unseen and unheard? Can you share with us the caucus and the work that needs to happen in that space?
Yeah, so the Hip Hop Caucus, and it's a testament to the people who work there, and it's now getting its due, finally, for what it is becoming. And it's a shout out to many of those who are here today, who are part of the caucus and the board. And it's important because it is a place where it is 100% either women, people of color, queer, and young people, 100%. And it is a place now. We have to be Dr. Mitchell knows, we have to be in excellence, and we have to strive to do things as leader knows in integrity. And so that's, and Dr. Swan, others know we have to every day fight for that. But it is a place where we have enough resources to operate. Hip hop saved the caucus too. And, hey, I'm just keeping this being, Mustafa, we have real talk.
We do have real talk.
Hip hop saved because, to be honest, if it had not been called the Hip Hop Caucus, white progressives probably would have taken it over. And so,
Say it again. Say it again.
oh man, if it had not been called the Hip Hop Caucus, then white progressives probably would have taken it over. The good thing, the Bible says that sometimes God will use the foolish things to confound the wise. And so because of that, nobody took something called hip hop, and not just white folks, it was black folk too. Particularly some bougie, I know my folks say, well, Rev, you went to how you bougie too? No, I'm not bougie like that. You know what I'm talking about.
I started at UDC, let's get it.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I started there. I was a Firebird first, you know what I mean? Before Bison. And so in that regard, they didn't take it seriously. And the idea behind the Hip Hop Caucus was that it also stripped you. So even though I might have had those credentials, we talk this all the time, from EPA, or I was from, you had all these credentials, whatever you were. When you came to an office, I love the team, the people somehow don't take, they do now, because now people know Hip Hop Caucus and all that kind of stuff, so I don't know the next generation how to deal with that. But when we first were starting, nobody took Hip Hop Caucus seriously. Hence why I was working with Dr. Dorothy Irene Height, because she was actually one who was like, don't worry about them. And she would talk about her story, about dealing with men, how the men of the movement didn't give her a place. And she would, in her right on the street, her very regal voice would be like, Rev, Martin and John and all of them didn't let me, they didn't respect me. I couldn't speak at the March on Washington. I was on to be their mother. And they didn't respect women to have that voice. And I would say, well, how do you feel about that? She said, well, God outlawed me to outlive them all. And so the Hip Hop Caucus is this organization that's a safe place, but we've also are key to fighting issues for our community. So again, you mentioned the podcast. You mentioned we had a podcast called Fish Ignorance, Death in Custody, which actually was up for an Image Award, nominated for Image Award. We had another film called Freshwater up for Image Award. We've done, we just launched Bank Black and Green, which is working with black banks to divest from the fossil fuel industry as well as from the prison industrial complex.
Yes.
Because racial justice is racial justice. Obviously from our vote. We saw all these things picked up the entity.
Yep.
But this is the thing though. What forced me to kind of go into the figure out philanthropy, thank goodness for Liz Halstead and other leaders because they were able to kind of run day-to-day kind of pieces in that aspect. And I realized we weren't getting resources, and this is why, and I say this all the time, and folks at Black Oak know I said this as well, that New School did a study and looked at the 12 largest foundations that were giving money. They were around $1.3 billion a year for advocacy. It's like a lot of money. It is a lot of money. 1.3 billion a year for advocacy around climate is good, is decent change. But only 1.3% of the 1.3 billion was going to EJ and people of color-led organizations. That's it. And so they would say, you show me your money, you show me where your heart is, right? But no money was going to Black, Brown, and Indigenous groups. And then on top of that, because obviously the chair at Green 2.0, we did a study at Green 2.0 in which when Black people went to work for predominantly white organizations, it was so toxic working for these organizations. It was the study literally called a revolving door. That's literally what the study is called, that they would go to these places and would be and young, particularly professionals, would be like, we can't work there. Like, we literally want to save the planet, we want clean air, we want clean water, but because of the oppression of working for these institutions, I am going crazy. And so the caucus was like, okay, well, that's not safe because you can't do this work if you're bitter or jaded or cynical. You can't do it. Like, it's just not possible. And you can't do it if you're pulling on yourself because you have nothing to pull on. And so the Hip Hop Caucus really became just a tree by the river that other orgs and other entities, other people. And that to me has been the most important thing of the Hip Hop Caucus work, is that the future, and I say this is probably, I don't usually get choked up that much. This system forces Black, Brown, and Indigenous excellence to be imposters. It forces them to not be themselves. And it strips them from their dignity and their Black and Brown and Indigenous excellence to make mediocre white people feel okay.
You got that right.
And the caucus is successful. And if more people in this movement stop trying to just let folks be used and let Black, Brown, and Indigenous people be the genius. They are not only the oppression you need to see to satisfy your trauma porn, but if you allow Black, Brown, and Indigenous people to flourish in the genius of our ancestors, then no Exxon, no Shell, no BP, or no fossil fuel industry can stand in the way of that excellence.
Before we close out, I want to talk a little bit about cultural influencers and artists and how incredibly important they are in helping us to win this fight. And as you're thinking about that, I'm gonna look to the audience, and I'm gonna ask you to quickly think about your favorite artist. And everybody, I'm just giving you a second to get it. Everybody got it? All right, I want you to shout out on 3 your favorite artist, as Rev is then gonna talk to us about how important these individuals are. So 1, 2, 3.
Beyonce.
All right, so we had a cross section. And I know some of the names that were shared with us are folks that the caucus has worked with.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about that, the work that's going on in Hollywood and in other locations. So.
I'm excited that people are now, first of all, to shout out my friend Anna Jane Joyner over at Good Energy. As a very good partner, and many others who are working in this space. Hip Hop Caucus and others are working to really use production. I believe that production is the next form of demonstration. And I believe that we have to use the camera and film to fight for our liberation. And so because the possibility industry has been doing that for years, they own Hollywood. And so we have to literally create stories and things that can captivate people's attention. Albert Einstein says, if you want to go from A to B, use logic. If you want to go everywhere, use imagination. And so I think that we have to use imagination in a way and creativity to do that. And that, I think that's the one thing. So we're doing everything now to create things. I'm so excited that we're creating, and we're also creating conversations. Shout out to Dawn Richard, who's not here, and others who are part of the team, who are actually organizing artists to have conversations. Because in the spirit of Eartha Kitt and Harry Belafonte and Nina Simone and many others, and we have to. They were able to have conversations. So we need to create spaces where artists can be a part, not to feel they're audience builders. They just come to an event to just pack the house, but they can use their thoughts and their genius to help them move along. So we're creating conversations with that. And I guess because I heard Beyonce, I'll use that as an example. And so, you know, I worked with Beyonce when we were doing the Houston Super Bowl, Hip Hop Summer Action, and voting. And then from there to see the growth. But what really was when we did the Home album. And during the Home album, Malik Yusuf, who helped to produce that album, was doing a song for Beyonce. And the song actually ended up, it was her climate song. And the song actually ended up on her album Lemonade, not on our album. It was Sandcastles. But the thing there is that she then kept talking about climate. Right? So then when the power outages happened in Texas, she was talking about her and Stevie Wonder got on stage talking about the climate crisis. And then now her latest song, Texas Hold'em, where she doesn't, country is literally about, not only is about climate change, it's also about climate anxiety. So she's literally evolving around the process. But most people even, and I'll say this, people don't know it, and then you have to ask yourself, why don't you know about Beyonce's climate evolution? And again, I would say that you would probably know it if it was Leo DiCaprio, and you would see it. But again, you don't think that Beyonce should be a climate activist. And we've seen that. We saw that we had during the COP in Paris. We actually had Rihanna, and we were trying to get Rihanna. Rihanna wanted to be a part. And then people literally told me, well, is she just doing this for herself? I'm like, that's Rihanna. What are y'all talking about? And then later on, Rihanna was so enthralled that literally she's now giving out $15 million to fight for climate justice. So I say this from this standpoint, that again, people in the movement would come to me and says, Rev, we want culture. We want culture. We want culture. And I would stop and I would say, but you already have a culture. It may be Birkenstock. It may be, maple syrup. I like Mike Tidwell, I like maple syrup. Don't I? Like Michael this weekend. I need no maple syrup, man. No, but the reality, though, is that you have a culture. And that's okay on most occasions. But when you need to be a more broader movement, and your culture is exclusive, even when some of y'all see this film you're about to see, it's gonna hit some of y'all. Because to be honest, Underwater Projects is about as black as you ever gonna see a comic film. And there's gonna be part of the audience gonna be like, oh my God, folks in the audience are gonna be crying and trying to run to Liz and Elijah knows to figure out more of that. And there's gonna be some of y'all who are going to feel a way. If you can get beyond that way, we can get beyond the climate crisis.
I don't want to get in trouble with the team because I know that you got some things you got to get to.
Yeah, I'm so sorry I won't be able. I have to actually go to LA. Actually, speaking of celebrities, I'm actually doing a thing tomorrow with Jane Fonda and Kerry Washington. Yeah, and Sharon Levine, and we're going to be talking about Cancer Alley and stuff and this. But so I'm leaving right now to catch that plane. But I had to be here. Thank you, DCEFF, for this amazing award. Thank you for honoring Hip Hop Caucus. Hip Hop Caucus, man, 20 years, y'all. 20 years. And the most important thing for me is that the Hip Hop Caucus doesn't need a rev. It doesn't need a rev to keep going. It actually just needs you. So all power to the people.
Let's give Rev a round of applause.